Hello, dear lurkers, and welcome back to the Third Age Babylon 5 podcast. Today we are going to discuss the episode Voices of Authority. So, we have an opening where the first ones are a topic again, and where there is the question whether or not the staff on the station should make contact to the first ones. We get a little bit information on that. And in general, it is an episode where we think about, do we need them? Do we want them? Do we talk to them? So there are an issue here. Then we have a new visitor, or maybe not visitor, a person planning to stay for longer from Earth arriving on the station. I have forgot her name, but she, blonde lady from Earth government who wants to have some kind of political influence on the station. I think we can discuss that in a very long manner. We then also we see first ones. We learn more about how the machine works. And we get a very big hint about what happened in season 1. We get a big hint, a kind of piece of proof actually, about the explosion that killed President Santiago. Is that a good synopsis? Can we work with that? It was improvised as hell.
We can definitely work with that. Julia Santi is the name.
I'm not gonna remember her name. I hate her about things.
It will help us.
She's
spot
part of
her.
it.
Yeah.
That's also fair.
In my notes, she's called right? I think for legal reasons, I should probably not say that, but you know what? Yeah. First impressions, Meike can start.
Well, this was really blood pressure episode for me. I don't. This is, I think. I mean, the last episodes from the last seasons have been quite some time, but I had to hit so often pause because I was so angry on my chair here, and had to make a break. Otherwise, I would have jumped through my Bildschirm
Screen, yes.
screen. Yeah, I'm missing words already because I'm so pissed off with this episode. Yeah, maybe I should call my doctor in advance.
It evokes a lot of emotion. I see that as a good
Yeah.
thing. Oh,
Maybe we should leave my first impression with that.
Yeah. I mean, I like it that it's an episode where definitely more plot knots are being put together and where more things are happening that are important for later. I think we get a lot of interesting impressions of the world as it is established at this point. I find it rather interesting episode where I feel like I'm really at the heart of the universe that we are having with all of the conflicts, whether it is people we want to punch or whether it is learning more about the machine, about the first ones. We have Marcus back on the station. So it's really, we are in the heart of Babylon 5, I would say, in this episode. Yeah.
I really love the juxtaposition of one plot of this episode being all the amazing adventures that you can have with the wondrous miracles of the universe and deep insight into how it all works, and then the politics that do not allow you to get to that. And I think it's beautiful that these two are paired with here, because it's early established that Sheridan would have been part of this amazing adventure, and instead he gets to deal with Julie and all of her political talk and the beautifulness. It's such a It really highlights how much you lose out on if you have to deal with this BS all the time. Do we want to stick with maybe the positive side first and then spiral into oblivion with the second plot? All right. Because Meike, you haven't talked so much with us in season 3 yet, so this is the first episode where I can really talk to you about our new main cast member. Marcus plays a big role in the quotes, and I'm so curious about your impressions of him.
Yeah, Pretty Boy is back. Maybe before we go to Marcus, let's start with the plot line at the beginning, because I was really happy to see Drow back, and I have to admit, I kind of missed his way of speaking. This pompous, gosh, theatrical way from him. Yeah, I was really happy to see that again for some reason. And I liked his interactions with Ivanova later, where she is sent instead of Sheridan because Sheridan busy. And I'm not sure, there were so many things I liked from her. I'm a surprising loving person. I surprise myself all the time.
Look at this, a paper cut. What a surprise. I love it.
Yes. It's so much forced positivity from her. Awesome. And at the later, a few seconds later, the machine is occupied. Oh, yeah, sorry, I forgot that sometimes. Her using the machine was interesting to see how this works, or at least for her. I mean, we don't really know if this is the same way Draal experiences this, but I like the take of it. And I was surprised. She was initially taught that she has to think of the first ones to find them, and I found really interesting that this planet she goes to, what was it, Sigma something? Wasn't that the planet where wasn't that the same one where the Narn fighters got destroyed?
Yes.
Which means that was where the shadows have been all the time.
But it's not. Some Narn fighters got lost there, but it's even further back in season 1 where
Yes. Here.
Sinclair's girlfriend on her adventure mission, Catherine, went, her ship got disabled and she started going down on the vessel. And after she was rescued by some Narn fighters, Jakar gave her the end speech about.
Yes, and it's also a point
giant.
where Jakar warned her of going. So
Yes.
yeah.
But
But you're right, it is definitely like a place that we have heard before that has been kind of mystical, questionable in universe. Yes.
Okay. I found it interesting that she was sent there with the idea of, okay, I'm looking for the first ones, or another group of first ones. If you think about it, should be more than just one. Because if you think about it, even though when she got there with the White Star in person, it is on one hand really risky, considering that the Narn fighters were destroyed there just by being there from the shadows. And this just the combination of the shadows being there, or at least they were there. I'm not sure if they are still there when she arrives. And the first ones just coming by. This is a bit too much of overlaying for me to feel comfortable about this connection. And honestly, I was really reserved with Marcus, but I loved their interaction. He's seems all serious and straight guy type, and then he was just pulling one joke and stupid thing after another. The whole thing, I could get a bucket and pretend to be this Volon god dude. And as when Ivanov said, yeah, that's the idea. Okay, I get my bucket. What?
he just goes along with it. It's great. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, what kind of person do you have to be to? I mean, he has seen a lot of things. He experienced a lot of things from the hints we got so far, and he is still on this level of making jokes and everything. Love it. So he will still be pretty boy for me. I'm sorry, he will not get away from this with that hairstyle. that's over.
Maybe he'll change it eventually. You don't know. There is still room for character growth like that. Um, I think we have to untangle the vision a little bit, because there's definitely also some confusion there, how far Ivanova's reach view is going, because there's, for one, the planet Sigma 957, which is where the walkers of Sigma 957 are. These are known to the Narn. These are known now as kind of the first ones. They have the tiki mask and say Zorg very, very nicely, which is fun. We'll talk about that. And then there is the vision that she has of the shadows being there, and I'm not I'm never quite sure if this is still the same planet, or if her entire view is getting pulled further into Zahadum, where the Narn fighters are got destroyed. I don't know, like how much the connection is there. Partly also because I got this impression that the shadow presence is not just at that planet, whichever planet that is, but actually inside sort of this information sphere that she's entered with the machine, that they're sort of this metaphysical presence that is there, which
Your take on this is that there are different information packages, but kind of jumbled
yeah.
over each other, and therefore it kind of feels like it's everything the same, but it's actually not.
But it's still like very much like you described. There is a lot of overlap here, that, whatever the machine is doing, whatever the first ones are doing, whatever the shadows are doing, somehow collides in this place. And even Dral says that this is also, on top of everything, then also something that the human mind shouldn't even have been able to comprehend or do in this way. So there's a lot of stuff happening all at once, definitely.
Maybe the immediate take I had when Draw said this, the human mind shouldn't be able to. We already had the hints with Ivanova being slightly telepathic. So my take would be that it's just her ability that might kick that.
That maybe gave her a bit more control over this, or something like that. Definitely, that I can see. One side note on this encounter, especially with Pretty Boy here, the Rangers and this quest for the first ones always feels for me like there's the most Tolkien inspiration in this show, and this show in general has some like fantasy elements to it. We've been just talking about episodes full of monks, and like Ivanova looking and seeing this fiery eye of the shadows very much reminds me of like looking into the Palantir and seeing Sauron gazing back at you, and this like omnipresent. I think this is also where for me it feels like this godly presence almost, that it's just lingering everywhere in the world and tries to gaze on everything that is happening. I'm also just quite happy that this, I think the first time we really see what the machine actually does. Like all the time they're just talking about a machine the size of a planet. And I love this as like a human perspective. This must be powerful and useful for something, but we've never really seen like, okay, but what does it do precisely? And now we get to see, it opens you to like explore the universe in this way, which is really nice to see.
Maybe before we move on to other topics, I just wanted to say I laughed so hard when with the first ones appearing.
Mm-hmm.
And Ivanova said or noted that they obviously can understand them, but they're not interested in speaking in a language they understand. That Marcus said, who knew they were French?
It's great. It's a great line.
I love this. I really love this. It was awesome.
Yeah, and what I also loved when they appeared was, I think I even said it, I was like, oh, disco spaceship, because it just looked so cute with all of its lights. And
Yes.
there was something interesting, I think, in that interaction, because a lot of the information that we get about the first ones we get from Delenn and from the Minbari in general, and they always paint the first ones as this other kinds of being. They're not like us. They are like on another level, so they don't understand us. We cannot reason with them, and we don't have the same emotions, like they are so different. And then Ivanova just, Susan, I call people that I like by the first name Susan, just manages to call them back by teasing them, by telling them, oh, well, you wouldn't do it. And which makes you think, are they really so different? I mean, they are like super bodiless space aliens, but in the end, you can just tease them like any human being.
Which I love this on multiple levels. For one, because it's a subversion of this like super classic sci-fi trope, like down to the very first like alien invasion stories is always this idea: if they're technologically more advanced, they must be morally more advanced as well. And here we see, no, they're just petty. They're incredibly petty, and even down to the fact that they have a disco spaceship and, a floating mask that is glowing and stuff. Like, you can't tell me they couldn't beam a projection of themselves over just as well as Dral does. They just choose not to. And it makes sense, right? The person that is closest to a first one right now that we see that has like more comprehensible interactions with us is Dral himself. He got like clinked into a matrix that allows him to learn about the entirety of the universe. And it hasn't turned him into like a cryptic, morally ambiguous, unrecognizable, monstrous, or godlike thing. He's just Dral, and he's theatrical, and he cracks jokes about it, and is just himself. And I almost feel like if you look at Dral and imagine what is Dral like in a million years, it's a disco spaceship. He loves theatrics so much. Of course it's that. Why would it be a menacing cube or monolith or something? Like, no, he would have fun with that. He would put on the giant stone tiki mask and mess with people more than anything. And it's
Which
great.
explains why Kosh is technically a troll.
It explains Kosh as well, right? Yeah. It's also like this nice disconnect between how these beings are and then how people talk about them who spent 1,000 years like mythologizing them, right? Like for Delenn, these are beings of myth and legend. And for Dral, it's just a Tuesday. And I love that.
So yeah.
Yeah, so anything more on the machine or on the mission that Susan and Marcus are on, or because I didn't take much notes about that. I think it was all pretty straightforward.
It's all pretty straightforward, and the things that aren't immediately then tie back into the Earth plot. I think we definitely should talk about Ivanova's attempt at projecting herself into the captain's quarters, and
Yes, but we can talk about
that will be connected to other things.
By the way, I'm sorry.
Maybe an honorable mention of Jakar, who is back in this episode. I was so...
Finally! Yes.
Yes!
Yes.
He's there. He's alive. He exists.
Jakar, notice. Yes, we noticed him.
Yeah, he is back. And he is talking to Delenn because he heard something about Ranger.
He is being obnoxious as all hell about it. As much as I love to see his dramatic performances in, like, together with the Non-Centauri War, it is so nice to see him just be himself a little bit. It's great.
Yeah, and then we have the interactions between him and Garibaldi, somewhere in the middle, and then in the end, where he finally gives Garibaldi the Book of Jaquan, where I was thinking, why didn't you have done this earlier? But I loved the way he did it. This in the middle of the night, yeah, just standing in front of Garibaldi's quarters and like, here, have the book, read it, we talk later.
Yeah, I don't speak none, learn. Which it goes, like, if you ask why didn't he do this earlier, I think it goes back to this. This is the holy text. Like, there are no copies of that. It's a handwritten thing that is handed down for generations that can't be translated. So it's like, I think under any other circumstance, Jakar would be, you can't. It's not accessible to anyone else. And now he's just so fed up with everybody rejecting him that he's just, well, I can't translate this for you. And guess what? It's not my problem. You will just have to deal with it. It's great.
Yeah, that was a great scene.
So at least somebody is having a nice time on the station. Everybody else, not so much. Because we have visitors again. And as always, visitors from Earth spell horror and terror in everybody's hearts.
Yeah. Where do we start?
So it's interesting. Sinclair was never on good terms with EarthGov, right? He always had contacts with a senator who was never helpful. Then we had the episode Eyes, where like the Internal Intelligence Service came to question all of these things. Sheridan initially looked on paper much more like the guy Earthgov wanted, right? He was this straight-up military guy. And so when Earthgov is unhappy with him, he doesn't get the eye treatment. He gets a pretty blonde girl coming to the station announcing he needs help from a political officer who is also eerily willing to do all kinds of things to improve morale, which is just a cherry on top of everything here.
Yeah, I mean, that is actually interesting because, yeah, I mean, that's definitely very, I mean, also, I'm just teasing that here, we have to keep that in mind. At a later point, we have a segment of Babylon 5 where we get flashbacks to Sheridan in the Earth Boundary War, I think. So, I also, because also in his whole makeup and hair situation and everything, they just picture him as this straightforward military guy who is completely loyal. And actually, that's something that I love about how this lady was written. That she isn't this evil kind of fascist. She is so she says the most disturbing and evil things and paints that as optimism. Like,
Yes.
yeah, no, here Sheridan did not just make his own opinion, have his own opinion on things. He's just confused. I'm here to help him. Like, oh, we don't have homeless. Oh,
Happy planet.
yeah. So one happy planet, and it's so terrifying because she pictures the most terrifying things so positively. It's
I don't know what she is, but it must be good stuff. Honestly.
It's super.
Because you can't be so delusional without
Yeah.
drugs. You
But-
can't tell me that.
people can.
I don't think she is, because she has this sugary, I mean, we will get to that, but she has this sugary demeanor all the time and says, oh, we're just one happy planet. And when Sheridan straight up asks her, when did all this happen? She's just upfront. Well, we wrote the dictionary. She knows that this is bullshit. She doesn't even hide that. She's just saying, we redefine the problem and it's not a problem anymore. And it just works. I don't need to hide this. I don't need to convince you of this. You just have to pull the line, which is such an interesting perspective. And perspective I think we get because she treats Sheridan as somebody who is loyal and can be pulled on board for all of this.
Yeah, and also I think to make this mental state mental hula hoops that she's doing there of how she paints all of these things so positively. I think you have to be not delusional at all to be able to be to put it into words like that. And because you have to be very strict with your own logic. So it's rather it takes a lot of mental capacities. You could use it for better things. I don't know why you choose to do it like that, but yeah.
It's,
I would
conspiracy
still
theories.
frame that as delusional, but yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, there is definitely a strong disconnect from reality there. It's just a question of how choice this
I
is.
think it, yeah, and I would say it is very much on purpose. And it is the energy she gets is from an ideology, and that's just a thing. If you are bind to a certain ideology, you can get very much energy for a stance like this.
I mean, really strongly get this from her later when she calls everyone from the night watch on the station together for her. Okay, we have new rules and literally tell us everything and spy everyone and
we will have to get through these in some detail. I swear I don't want to keep veering into the whole her getting naked thing, but I think as a starting point it's interesting because just for our lurkers, last week we talked about the concept how Earth treats humans and human bodies, and I think, Layla, you mentioned this idea that Earth at least sells a lot of their telepathy things with this idea. Humans are just resources that you can rewrite and use and utilize. And taken to its full conclusion, this is very much what she embodies, right? This is why she's so willing to immediately, pull on sexual favors and everything, because it's just a resource that she has that is used for the state. It is logically completely in line with the rest of the ideology and fueled by that so much, which makes this so scary because it showcases how far this is actually taken by people who are not just sort of buying into this, but utilizing it actively. There's so much to her and so much we want to put at once, but let's maybe try to go through different interactions that she has. The first one being sort of her asserting what her role is actually supposed to be as a political officer, and sussing out with Sheridan what this actually means, because his first response is, well, I've been assigned authority over the station by the president. I'm not going to change this, which I think is smart that he immediately pulls in the presidential orders for this, because this is very much still tugging the line of being a loyalist. But for me, this also feels a lot like a Sinclair-esque move, that his first appeal is to the chain of command and the protocol and the rule book, which is something that Sinclair loved to do.
Who does a Sinclair move? She or him?
Sheridan.
Sheridan.
Because his first response is, you come here as a political officer. In the book, it doesn't say there should be a political officer for me, so what are you doing? And I think that, this is him meeting her on equal ground, because all she's talking about is like, when somebody asks, why are we supposed to persecute people without evidence? Well, because you're part of the Politburo now.
But that's actually an interesting point here, because what I noted down for that, in the last session with the Night Watch, was that there is, oh god, yeah, I didn't look up a translation for this word that I learned at school. Wait, let me give me a moment. Divide and Teile.
Separation of powers.
The separation of powers, of course. The separation of powers that, there is this theory that dates back to the 18th century, to Montesquieu and other people who wrote at that time, that to have a functioning government and a functioning society, basically, and a functioning democracy was also the idea. You need to have a certain 3 parts of powers within your state divided and be independent of each other. And as soon as you merge them together, you are one step closer to failure and to dictatorship in the end. And these 3 powers are the executive, which would be the police, are the law, and what is the
Legislative.
Legislative? What is
Legislative jurisdiction.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
You're somebody who sets the law, who judges the law, and who
Right, and they should be independent of each other. And I just found it interesting to notice that here it's just a textbook example of, hey, let's merge these because it's more powerful. Because now you have a policeman who's suddenly working in a political organization, and that's just fucked up.
Yeah, and it's also something that, if we go with our specific European perspective to the OGs of fascism, it's something that you see very much in if you talk about Nazi Germany, this mixing with party organizations and real organizations that start taking over policing, that start taking over things. And this is very much what's happening here, where Nightwatch just starts out as a party program, essentially, that is optional on the side, and it just keeps becoming more and more synonymous with the station security, and then starts expanding these things. Always also very much with the big notion that, oh, this is all legitimate. We are not breaking regulations for you in your capacity as a security officer. You just get a new role on top of that. So on paper, it is still the separation of powers is still there, just not in practice.
Yeah.
I noted down this separation of powers thing as well, also because I thought of an interesting parallel here, which is that she also, like, there should be a separation of powers. Another separation that I always find fairly important is that there is a separation between private matters and official matters, which is also a line that she immediately blurs. She immediately says, here's something that we should discuss. I suggest dinner. These 2 are synonymous now, because your life is dedicated to the state. Obviously, it's the same. It's the textbook definition of totalitarianism, because the totality of everything is in service to the programs, the state, the new policy, as she keeps repeatedly calling it, which is fascinating because it's an ideology. It's not a policy that's being put forward.
Yes, and you see very clearly where it is an ideology when you look at how she phrases things when they discuss Earth government having a contract with the Centauri, and Sheridan mentions that, yeah, I don't think that Earth should have any kind of contract with a government that brings war to other planets, that because the war could spread and because it's wrong, and because they, if we don't stop them, they will definitely attack us as well. And she just really like, it's almost transparency that she gives her actually like, yeah, no, we phrase it differently. We say it's a rumor and it's not gonna happen anyway because the proof that the Centauri are not gonna attack other people and definitely not us is that we have the contract with them.
Yeah.
So we're not question whether we should have a contract with them. Earth making a contract with them is proof that this is wrong, which is, it hurts. It hurts.
It hurts, but it is like such a simple logic. Like because the resolution of this, you don't question it. Somebody else did this, and this is what she comes back to this. We have leaders, and they are capable, and why would you waste time questioning them? It's just a rude.
Yeah, the two formulations, I'm not sure if I get them right, but they triggered me really hard. One with the conversation with Sheridan at dinner. She was several times going in the direction of why bother our leaders or no, what was it? Blame them or make them feel inadequate or anything like that. So yeah, they know that they just deal in it in their own way. That was the time where I really wanted to punch my screen. And the second time was when she had her little night watch meeting, and she was talking about purity.
Ideological purity, even, yes.
Yes.
Yes. And,
That really hit me hard.
and all these conversations tie back into this topic of separation of powers because all the while she's talking to Sheridan very much as a soldier. She's talking to Sergeant Zach as a soldier. I've never before heard his rank. And this is very much this idea that what she puts forward is, of course, the military will pull the government's line, right? Of course, that is one and the same. The separation between legislature and executive shouldn't exist, which is dangerous. It's like one of the most like fundamental things that the military is not supposed to do, the handiwork of any individual government. It's supposed to be separated from that for good reason, because the moment you have a military getting involved with government, you have a coup, which is something she jokes about because, once again, she is so horribly self-aware about everything that is happening, and it is incredibly beautiful.
Yes, which I think is an important aspect that actually even later in that episode in another plot also is narrated in a nice way, that when we look at dictatorships being established or at really like any kind of government structure or society going terribly wrong, falling into fascism or something similar, it's just not ever valid to say people didn't know. You have a lot of people who did know how things worked and still did them because the mind can do a terrible stand. Like if you buy into a government like that, you probably don't see the camps on Earth or the prisons where people are held who disagree with the government. You focus on this part of the ideology and your mind can really use its capacity on that, and people are not crazy, not stupid, not completely uneducated. They are aware of it and are still able to do that, and that's just also something that's possible for humans, which I always think it's impossible to point out. You don't have to be mentally ill or whatever. Actually, those people are not even likely to even more likely to do that than other people. Like, it's just a thing that people can do. And I think, yeah, in another part of the plot, it becomes very much important. But if it's okay, I would like to talk about another thing that Miss whatever mentions at dinner.
Very much.
And it is this thing where Sheridan mentions things just like homelessness and poverty. And she's like, yeah, we don't have that on Earth. And it's like, of course, we still have like displaced people, but they chose that because the government says everyone can have a job and so everyone has a job. And of course, it's like, yeah, blah, 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 don't question the government. But there's another aspect to that. And I think that that it's again like, she is very transparent with how she kind of creates the truth that she believes in. She shows Sheridan, okay, this is how I construct a truth in my head, and even though there is conflicting proof, I can just sort it here and the discussion is over, then I am loyal. But I think there is still an ideology part which she believes in, and that is just that it is the right thing to do, because there are a lot of theories on the table, and they have been for a long time, that really are just like pointing out that if we could just improve the environment, the world, we could, over a few generations, create the perfect people. Like, if we are just in complete control of private life, of whatever, if the lines blur from work to private life, then we could just improve, and we would get the perfect people. that people would lose all of these features that we don't like, be it laziness, be it too much creativity, whatever you want. And it's questionable whether that would ever work. And of course, it leads to dangerous decisions. But I think that she is convinced that this improvement of a population is the right way to go.
That's interesting to kind of find the core of, because there must be a reason she's doing all this, right?
The interesting thing is, though, this whole construction you just described is the same thing we had last episode with the mind wipe. We cut away the problematic parts and keep the good things standing.
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly. So it's basically this idea that's already implemented, just growing on a bigger area.
And I think this is like an important part to keep in mind when we're now talking about, we this episode learned that Vice President Clark did some shady things, and we see this new political officer. We've seen Nightwatch happening. But when Sheridan asks, when did all of this happen? How did this happen so quickly? It shouldn't be so much of a surprise to him, because the groundwork for all this has been laid. Like, the mind wipes have been happening for a long time. We know that Earth Alliance has a history of brutally cracking down on riots and stuff like that. The fact that this regime can now so quickly threaten the division of power in the government, that security is so easily attached to the political bureau and stuff, is indicative of the fact that Earth Alliance wasn't in a great place in the first wasn't that great in the first place. And I think this is what Sheridan kind of has to reckon with here as well, that it's so easy. You don't have to do that many gymnastics to get to the point where she's at. This is where all of a sudden all of these leaders for Nightwatch and stuff come out of the woodworks. They have had their own niches in the system for a long time now.
What I was wondering is that, couldn't Sheridan go, or back in time, of course, wouldn't he have been in the position to say, no, you're not allowed to work as security and night watch?
I wonder, because in the very beginning, Nightwatch is almost introduced as this sort of, hobby activity that you take on the side. And probably then they would have been, what are you, fascists? You want to govern what your security people do on their own time, what they put on their body? Why are you so authoritarian? I think they would have flipped it on its head. But I imagine, like, if he had recognized this as big of a threat, definitely, like, even the fact that they get paid to put on the armbands, you could probably string something out of that this is compromising their position as law enforcement. I think you could have done something like this. I do wonder how much Sheridan is a little bit naive to all of this.
Yes, but I also wonder whether this is maybe our European or German understanding of how that works. Because I think here, if you want to work in such a public service position, where not just in Germany, it's in other European countries as well, and where you are like a policeman or lawyer or something, your freedom to join any political party or group is limited to keep your neutrality. So if you want to work in such a position, even if you are a teacher, you have to be careful, because you don't have all of the political freedoms normal citizens have. And I don't think something like that exists in America.
Especially at the 90s, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's definitely also then, like, it's certainly not unimaginable that something like this doesn't exist in the world that Babylon 5 is painting. That for sure is the case. I would be interested to go into a bit of detail when they have this conversation about, how did Earth become one happy planet, which is very far off from it. And I do love that her first reaction is to not know what lurkers are, and because it puts kind of this onus on Sheridan that he's the crazy one, because he's talking about, like, homeless people, which why would you do that? And it's really trying to generate immediately this image that things have always been this way. The dictionary was always rewritten, and it's a bit like pointing at the elephant at the room, but obviously this episode has a lot of parallels to 1984, down to the fact that the Ministry of Peace exists and that a lot of the iconography is very much that.
I didn't want to say that here actually, but now that you brought it up, I will say it.
Sorry.
Because, yeah, I mean, you have these words like the Ministry of Peace and even this Nightwatch thing, it is a direct reference to 1984. About to the novel, but also what I find even more interesting sometimes even is that some of the images remind me so much of one version of 1984 as a movie, and I think it is the 80s version which with John Hurt as. But anyway, I was wondering in general if we don't need at some point later definitely need a special where we compare the iconography but also the writing of Babylon 5 to the novel as well as the specific movie. Not to, because I don't think the show uses some of these features to point out, hey, this was the perfect novel. It describes to us how politics and society work, but it makes its references on purpose, and they are strong and obvious. Yeah,
It's a strong influence, and one of these influences definitely this uncertainty about the big picture that in 1984 is created by the fact that history is rewritten all the time, and it's trying to create this sense of timelessness.
Yes, history is denied. History is just non-existent. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is the interesting thing.
And this is very much what we are rewriting the dictionary. We are inventing a new way of thinking, of dealing with problems, all of which she explains in sort of this detail and uses in this small detail on Sheridan. And then later we can talk about this in the big Nightwatch meeting. She does sort of the big picture version of this. Like, what does this mean for the everyday? In between the two, we do have the conversation that they share in the captain's quarters, which I just need to highlight for Ivanova's involvement in all of this. It's such a little bright spot in an otherwise dark storyline, I think. Okay, but there's nothing. Okay, sure.
Go on.
Honestly, there's nothing I want to say to this.
I do think what makes this work for me is the parallel between Zach's interactions with her and Sheridan's interactions with her. Because with Sheridan, this is an incredibly stupid thing to try. Like, it's interesting to see that she has this idea of I can use my body as a resource like anything else in the service of the state, blah, 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 blah. For Sheridan, this is a stupid thing to try because he just lost his wife. He's definitely not in the business of, sleeping with coworkers and stuff like that. Zach, on the other hand, is completely in that business and like fully tries to take her up on this offer, which is a nice callback also to the fact that he always felt like his jacket doesn't fit right, and she comments on that, picks up on that, which I find really nice. And this, I think, makes it work because otherwise it would feel easily like an over-the-top, oh my god, she's an evil bitch sort of trope. But here it's really hiding, no, this works. This is like a strategy that is part of the toolkit that overall works, even if it's just indirectly through this idea of I can reject him now and assert dominance that way. And I do like Ivanova's side of things, where on one hand that she has this close relationship with the captain, that her idea is, I'm just gonna beam randomly in his quarters. The likelihood that something bad's gonna happen is very low. And then on the other hand, that she immediately also recognizes how out of character this is. And sort of from her expression, she seems to immediately recognize, oh, you have this to deal with. Well, I'm glad I'm not here.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite moment was actually when, Ivanova and Susan and Susan and Sheridan are in this front room, and she's naked in the back room. And he says that he can't just leave on that mission. I mean, I would have just left her there naked, but he said that he can't.
Well, I don't think it's because of the naked lady. I think it's because she would call people.
Yeah, probably. I would not have thought I would have just left her there. But anyway, and then Sheridan gives Susan like instructions on how to go. Take someone who speaks Nambari, alert Garibaldi, and be careful. And she says, yeah, you too. And in my head, it was just like, okay, now we also need someone who speaks Nambari, and he has to alert people. Yeah, it was just honey in my head.
Well, I think it's this fun thing of her recognizing, ancient eldritch beings in the universe. This lady in your office is kind of the same thing. Which reminds me, we didn't talk about it at all, but her very first intro into Sheridan's office, I actually find really telling.
Why?
Because it is sort of a micro universe of how she constructs reality, right? Where she's not telling him that she did anything wrong. She's just mentioning that, like, aside from the giant seal of Earthgov on the wall, there's not much that tells you that this is the heart of
Yeah.
Earth Authority, which, objectively is a crazy thing to say, because there is the giant fucking seal on the wall. But she's, immediately rifling what is she drawn to. She immediately goes through, like, his medals that he's earned, sort of military accolades and that sort of thing, which, I think a few episodes earlier, this might have even worked. We saw Sheridan pine a little bit for having command of a starship when the Explorer, the Cortez, was there, and he was a little bit like, oh, I didn't want to be a politician and something. So I think she's still reading him correctly on some level, that, you could push her, don't you want to be like a military hero and do like all this heroic stuff? He's moved past this by that point, but it makes sense that this is sort of the first mode that she would interact with him in that way. And
we also have to talk about how she's acted out in that scene, because in one shot she literally was there, like.
yeah.
And I was like, was that one here? Was that really necessary?
But I think it plays once again into this thing, like, she's fully aware of what she's doing, and she is over the top evil about it.
Yeah.
And yeah, just projecting also this, like, self-assuredness of, I know technically I have no power here, but guess what? This office is mine now.
I mean, now that we think about it, I think that Sheridan actually still, like, he totally disagrees with her, and he wants to find a way to get rid of her, and he does not want her to interrupt his work, because he sees the move that Earthgov is doing there. But I also think that he still pays her respect. He respects her as a person in a way that he would at least not actively, like, disrespect her, like leave her naked in his quarters, or call someone to find her naked in her quarters. Or I would also just thinking, like, okay, so what if he can't get rid of her? What if he just cannot send her back to Earth? If she actually has to stay on the station? I was wondering, like, I can be evil in a way if people annoy me, so I would have thought, okay, have her there and just make it impossible for her to do her job, like make rules that she cannot get any information, cannot get into any meetings. I mean, of course, then the problem in reality is that the wrong people would feed her information and it would blow up quite quickly. But just have her run around as this idiot that does not have any of the information that she needs or any of the resources. I would have enjoyed that. Just face her, watch her running into walls that you put up for her. I could have fun with that.
I mean, it would be really interesting to see that since she obviously like rules so much, threw so much rules in her direction that the rules oppress her and highly work her person. That would have been nice, because it would be directly faced with the things she thinks are awesome.
But I think Sheridan would not be the kind of person to do that to someone.
No, I think that would be. It feels more like a Sinclair thing.
It feels like more of a Sinclair thing, but I think this is also where we run into this issue that Sheridan isn't fully like an audience surrogate here, because, like, the more serious question we have to ask ourselves is, okay, all of this happens. You have like a political officer talking to you about how the government has reinvented the dictionary and has, built camps for all the mentally deranged criminals to go into. So at what point do you quit? Because it isn't this point. Sheridan at no point in this episode is like, yeah, guess what? This government is bullshit. I will not be part of it anymore. Like, this isn't a part of this discussion at all. So you do have to ask kind of this uncomfortable question, okay, but when does this happen, right? Like, at what point does he seriously consider, well, I am part of a government that does these things. Do I want to do so? And what are the reasons for not doing so? I think in this episode, it's very much this idea that he still has, that you can change things from within. And I think, like, sort of pushed to the side, but at the end of the episode, already starts to fall apart. but I don't know if
I
we
mean,
go there yet.
I would argue that since he already formed this, let's call it revolutionary circle with the Rangers, with Dylan and the other he constructed an alliance with, he already is sort of with one foot out of this
Yeah.
government circle. So he's basically standing there all the time in two worlds and trying to get the positive things, the hope, the possibilities he sees and has already seen back into the government there is. So the question is, how much do you or can you really say that he is still part of the government?
I think I'm just thinking back a little bit to to Sinclair, who in the first season, had this one episode pretending he was a space Nazi to get on good terms with the Homefront people. And it was just so fun for Sinclair to see, like, he had to do this one afternoon and he was so fed up with it immediately. So if we think about how would Sinclair deal with this sort of lady, I wonder if he would have had the patience to even stay on board, even like for appearances with EarthGov at
I'm
bits.
pretty sure he would if necessary he would have hijacked some starfighter or anything and would be off
It would be very fit
without no.
for him to just, find a way to convince the Zog people to let him on board and do adventures there instead of sticking around. No,
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
definitely true what
It-
you're saying, that that Sheridan is like 1 foot out the door already at this point. It feels very much, which if we want, there is still one subplot that we could quickly mention that pertains to being 1 foot out of the door, which is the code 7R that keeps coming up. I have to say is possibly the stupidest thing you could do for a secret meeting. Just give it a different name that doesn't show up in any of the books and that anybody does one Google search on and recognizes. I mean, that Jakar was running around and he's heard the word Rangers and is doing investigations. That's one thing, but Zach catching on, I'm sorry, but
Yeah, he's not the brightest candle on the cake. So if even he gets the information,
yeah.
that's and I mean he literally I can't speak anymore. At the end, he's blowing everything up with telling the bitch about 7R.
But I mean, there, as much as I also like to hark on the fact that he's kind of not the brightest candle on the cake, I think it's a nice illustration to see like what the risk for Sheridan's strategy is here, right? Because he is halfway out the door, but not really, and hasn't like fully confided into anybody. You say about Zach what you will, but he is catching on to the fact that people are keeping secrets from him, and he doesn't know which ones. So, yeah, probably of
The
all
situation.
probably of all the Nightwatch people on the station, he has reported the one thing that is probably actually noteworthy of reporting. If your superior officers start doing secret meetings with, unlawful designations, if there is something that would legitimately be worth like reporting to somebody up the chain of command, it would be something like that. So to his credit, right, he blows everything up, but he was never really given a chance to do something else, which is a shame.
And I think what led to this interaction is his earlier discussion with Garibaldi.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of get why Garibaldi is acting the way he is. The problem is that he is. I mean, I think if he did it a bit of an emotional level, like, hey, I can't tell you everything, and like on this level, I think Zach might not have asked
Maybe.
the lady, because for me it feels a bit more like he is pushed away from Garibaldi. I mean, he is literally saying, okay, we have to work together, but please don't talk to me for the rest of the day. I think Garibaldi created here a distance that if he doesn't fix it quickly, which I don't see because it's Garibaldi, this will blow up. Because this is pushing him
Yeah.
in the wrong direction.
Briefly to this point, for one, I completely agree on the emotional part. I think Garibaldi sort of lacks a little bit the finesse to make this work. But I also think this might be a problem fundamentally with how Garibaldi does his work, because Garibaldi is very much approaching this, and he always did this, even, with his former second in command, which went horribly wrong, where he's like, you've worked for me for so long. We had personal interactions. I know your family and stuff like this. So why aren't you sticking by me? He's running his entire department on these personal connections with people because he's this down to the earth, personal guy, also kind of, anti-authority sort of guy. He doesn't like the government very much unless it's electrocuting people and stuff like that. What he doesn't do, he doesn't lead his people with any sort of ideal. He doesn't offer any sort of ideology, not even any positive one. He's not asking Zach to stick around and stand in for what he swore his oath on, or to protect the station or the people. And he asking, because you're my guy. And that's just not enough. And I think if he had...
especially after this talk happens, after they watch the news and get the information, hey, there's a bit that probably Clark killed Santiago or let him be killed. That would have been the perfect point to get out a statement like, hey guys, we have to this and this and this.
Yes.
But he didn't. He just turn it off and we're not talking about it.
And this is, and to the point, if I remember correctly, Zach is even searching for this, right? He's even asking, this can't be right? There must be some mistake in this. He is questioning things in a way, and he doesn't get anything back for that. It's just the personal level. So, yeah, that's why I think if Garibaldi would be better at this personal appeal, that might have fixed the situation with Zach now. But I think in general, he still has a leadership style that maybe at the scale of running station security doesn't work very well, because he is relying so much on personal connection. And if you're trying to, be part of this big political entity, I don't see that working very well. But in the interest of not remaining too long in this discussion, maybe let's talk about sort of where things go ahead for Zach as well, with the peer pressure and everything, is the big Night Watch meeting. We already highlighted a bit, but the posters in the backdrop here are just fantastic. They are so, Soviet constructivism, dystopian sort of style. It's really amazing. They have such inspiring slogans as "work." So we're immediately sort of in this sort of mindset. And we've seen a bunch of Night Watch meetings up to this point, and they've always been slowly tightening the screws, and now it's the first time that it's really, oh no, this is our policy now. You don't have a choice anymore. This isn't about, just protecting people. You have new authority now. And I think that is an interesting switch. It's also interesting that Zach is most uncomfortable with that.
He's not necessarily the only one. I mean, there was at least one other person who asked, isn't this a bit too much?
Yeah.
So there is conscious in the room that this all might be a bit of a problem, but they don't have the backbone to do anything about it. They just go with the flow, or at least it feels like that.
And not the backbone, and I think also just this instinctual feeling like you can't win a discussion with this woman. We've seen her apply circular logic flawlessly, perfectly. So there's you can't reason your way out of this. So it's possibly sort of this sense of, well, I feel that this is wrong, but I can't explain why exactly. So how do I speak up now? Because if I'm just standing up and saying this is wrong, and not everybody else does this with me, oh no, then the peer pressure starts setting back in.
But, well, still, I mean, at this point, you at least don't see any problems of getting out of the group, hopefully. That would have been a choice at this point.
Yeah.
Okay, here you have your decoration clothes back. I'm out of here.
But I think it's this, I think part of the issue is, right, you can't do that without being the next one to be detained. I think this is at the back of people's mind. This is Night Watch, who arrested a shopkeep for saying the taxes were being raised too much. Like, they know that we are past the point where you could walk out of this room without consequences. If you do so, you're at the very least losing your job.
Also because she says in the beginning that no one there is ever to disagree with the government anymore, and if you now leave the group, you're kind of disagreeing with them. So
Yeah,
that's
it's harsh. But it's like fantastic to see where, like, physically, this is the point to say no, still very much so, but you can see how it is constructed in a way that it's like the least easy decision to make. That any sort of avoidance mechanism that people have, any justification they have to stay, will be so much more appealing at this point.
So yeah, watch out what kind of extracurricular activities you're taking on.
Yes.
See, it's going.
And I mean, it's also this lingering thing where, if we're going to the last point of the episode, she goes back to Earth, sure, because she has a crisis to deal with. But I think this is what I meant when I said it's already sort of Sheridan's naivety being deconstructed a little bit. The idea that video proof of the vice president saying, "I've wanted Santiago dead for a long time," would change things at this state. I don't think, like, very early on people say, they're gonna say this is a fake, this is not going to work out. We learn from newsreel, it's being subjected to a government inquiry to prove its validity or not. Guess where that's going to go? Like, it's pushed to the side so much, but it's not made a center point that we can understand.
But what I find interesting here is, of course, that it is being questioned, it is being put into this discussion of who tells us what is the truth and what not. So, on the one hand, I find it interesting that if you see such a regime establishing itself, you also always have to deal with the stark fact of, even if you have physical proof of them doing something terrible, like murdering the old president or establishing camps for people or whatever, it might not be enough to convince the whole big public to do something. But also, how this is narrated, it also shows that you can still afterwards not say that nobody knew. Like, the idea, the statement is out there, and it might get lost and get twisted in all of the complex social and political things, but the important thing is that it's out there and that the idea is there, and people cannot be like, "Oh God, we never knew." It's like, it was there.
Yes.
And that is what I find. I mean, it's very little, but I think it is so important when you try to understand these processes, that it's not just like evil. It doesn't just surprise you as people like to picture it.
Yeah.
The point is, if you consider it the public, it's not an evil choice of we ignore this. It's about convenience. It's about I stick where I am because it is easier, because it is safe, because it's the place I know, and if I would act with the new informations, I don't know where I will be getting. This is, I mean, you can put this on so many different situations. You think about the climate change. People knew this ages ago. What did they do? Nothing. Even now, where it's like, yeah, it's about time, do or die, people tend to say, "Oh, no, nothing is happening. Everything is fine. We don't have to change anything. Why cut down on our own luxury, whatever? Who cares?"
So in this discussion, I don't like to picture people as this convenient type, because actually when I look at
not everyone.
No. When I look at these crises, I think it really doesn't work like that, because the people making these big decisions in, like, climate change, they are not the people who want to stay convenient. Like, if I stop to drive a car, the planet is still dying. I don't have a car, but I think it's more important that here we have opened up this problem of, we have this fact out there, and this fact can be this video of Clark saying these things, or it can be like the data that we have supporting climate change, or it can be any other kind of political news. We have these different facts out there, and people tend to think, okay, facts are neutral, but facts happen in context. Facts have to be interpreted. And it is easy to have the facts right in front of your nose and to miss the important things that they're telling you. But although it is so easy, you still afterwards also, with whatever happens next, you still have the responsibility of you You could have known. And it's a fucking tough position to be in, but it's also something that we can't ignore. We can't just play innocent of, because many things are there and we could recognize them, and often we fail to recognize them, I guess.
I also comes down to the fact that yes, this video can be explained away, but there will have to be an explanation, which then, even just in hindsight, is provably untrue. So there is definitely this element. At least the government can't pretend to be dumb anymore. And that, I think, it applies in that way on every level. Of course, you can have this perspective of somebody choosing convenience over everything, choosing not to see it. But then if you want to look more at the decision-making level, there also you have people who now at least have to consciously choose to avoid something, which is easier to later deal with, I guess.
Yeah, which would go in the same direction with what I was trying to say. This would also match with what we said about the women in question in this episode. She is like that. She's just, we rephrase everything.
Yeah.
And then the whole thing about the problem is not a problem anymore.
It's this constant redefining, which at least then you can trace it, right? Even, and maybe this goes into this direction. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how often the Earth government decides these are homeless people, these are displaced people, these are people who are challenged in their housing situation, or whatever they want to call it. At the end of the day, the fact at the core of it is still there, is still recognized, like you say. And that's sort of the same thing with the video. Of course, the government will call it a fake, or say that it's been manufactured or misrepresented, or something like that. But at the end of the day, no matter how much redefined it is still there. The video is still out there in some capacity, and that's worth something. Plus, it's fair to say that also Sheridan and his sort of building resistance are naive to the point where they think this will immediately change everything. They're talking from the very beginning, when we're talking about this conspiracy, of building a case and working towards the point where it maybe flips opinion. So this is just one step in that direction.
Yes, or also just later, with whatever happens next, that he can at least say it was out there.
Yes.
Like, it was available.
We tried.
Which brings us back to climate change. Congratulations. Is that worth something? We'll have to see. But we did try. There's something there. That's great. Okay, we touched in a roundabout way on everything, I think. If there's one thing that we can be sure of, something will be back from Earth, because this is very much, we made some progress in this episode with the first ones contacting some and them saying, hey, we will be here if you call. That's great. But we have not resolved anything in the direction of the Earth plot. We've really just gotten a glimpse again of how bad things have gotten in the meantime. We'll have to see how quickly anything can be done about this.
As always, you can find us on many social media channels. We will hopefully soon appear on Blue Sky. We are Third Age Podcast everywhere. And you can find us anywhere where there are podcasts. But of course, here on YouTube, we are the cutest, because here you can see us.